Welcome and thanks for joining the Tahoe Regional Young Professionals in our 2016 candidate interview series for South Lake Tahoe City Council. TRYP is a politically neutral organization and does not endorse candidates or ballot measures. However, this video series is produced to provide our community with information to help them make a prepared and informative vote on November 8th. Each of the 10 City Council candidates will have 10 minutes to answer 3 questions that they've received in advance and 1 free-form question as well. And right now we're here with Ted Long. Thanks for joining us, Ted.
My pleasure. Thanks for doing this. Yeah.
Appreciate it. So Ted, let's get right into it.
Sure.
What are your goals for the city, and how will the city of South Lake Tahoe look in the next 5 years?
Well, assuming they follow my goals, there's several things we need to accomplish. The first is the basics. We get some roads fixed. We got to relook at, the police, fire, and make sure that our community is secure and protected. The basic things that a city's supposed to do. Okay, then we've got the bigger issue of affordable housing. It's become a major issue now in 2 ways. One, we have the opportunity to bring people like yourself into our community now, the young professionals and people working out of Silicon Valley, and there's no place for them to live, so they go home. The chamber lost a person, the hospital's lost a couple people because they can't find housing. The other side of that is the workforce issue. I mean, this is a tourist town. I mean, unfortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, and a lot of the people who live here are waiting tables and, struggling to make it, and the rents are going up. We need to get together with some employers, provide some employee housing. We need to look at how we can interact with the rest of the building community, South Tahoe Public Utilities, et cetera, and how the whole fee structure is preventing us from providing the kind of housing that we really need. So with that in mind, what I'd like to see at the end of my term, or in 5 years as you put it, is a town that is respected for its respect of its people. That we take care of folks. I mean, that with the old days of one size fits all aren't applicable. We need to look at projects on an individual basis, and we need to acknowledge that there's a homeless problem. We need to acknowledge there's a mental health problem, working with one of the judges now on trying to bring a program for mental health, and be known as a community that cares about its people and acts accordingly. I think we all win when everybody has a reasonable living and a reasonable place to live. Crime, drugs, all that other stuff is so intimately related to the struggle of people, and it's time that we as a nation, let alone a city, recognize that and step forward to resolve it.
Wow, fantastic. So, and you feel that the city can have an active role in that?
Yeah.
Addressing those issues.
Sure, it's a 2-phase thing. You see, there's one. Let me use tourism as an example. I mean, I look at tourism as the promotion as 2 things. One, getting them here, but then once they're here, having the kind of town that brings them back. Mm-hmm. So, and it's the same way when I look at these issues. Sure, we're one small town. But I'll tell you what, we could get national recognition, for example, if all of a sudden we had a breakthrough in this area and became that kind of community. So it's kind of like it takes time. Change is not, especially change of this sort, doesn't happen overnight. But you got to put that stake in the ground. So you got to have something that people move to, and we could be the community that does that.
I think that's a realistic goal, considering the city taking an active role in addressing those issues on a 5-year scale.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Look. Whenever we want to do something, somehow, we can invade countries, we can do all sorts, and it all comes out. It's all a question of what your priorities are. If we can bring this to the forefront as a real priority, the solutions are out there. We do not have to reinvent the wheel. The problem is how do you bring something to the forefront? How do you make it a priority? And for me, it's something that I've championed for years, is that you start the conversation. And if you make sense, if you're rational, if you're reasonable, if it makes sense, other people join the conversation, mm-hmm. and pretty soon everybody's talking about it. Pretty soon it happens, and that's how I see the revolution, as my Bernie Sanders conversation, as the revolution taking place.
So you touched base on something that kind of leads us to our next question here, and that's regarding housing affordability. Yeah. What concrete actions can the city take to provide more housing to the residents of South Lake Tahoe?
Yeah, there's several things we can do. I mean, I think the first thing is that we stand for it. In other words, so when everybody else is interacting, they know the city stands for affordable housing. That's and that's really not that complicated. The other side of it is to start looking at fees. If we have a genuine affordable project, it's going to be, say, deed restricted or otherwise provided for that, let's look at the fee scale. Right now, I am told, and I believe it because I've done some of this, that it could cost as much as $100,000 in fees between South Tahoe Public Utilities, building permits, TRPA and everything else before a shovel goes in the ground. Well, that's maybe we don't have to do that if we can say our project is going to solve another issue. You follow me? So in other words, it's like getting the money and spending it on something to make the town better. Waiving it is the same as spending it on something to make the town better, as far as I can tell. So that's a big part of it. And I have a sneaking suspicion that once we get some momentum in this direction, we'll find a lot of other ways to do it. For example, there are companies, there's projects where if you add a story, for example, residential over commercial, things that have not been done here, which can be done, which when that door is open, become possibilities. So it's kind of like the old expression, we don't know what we don't know until we start a serious effort towards solving the problem.
Right, and with the newer buildings that are coming in with redevelopment, as we know, that reduces a lot of the sediment issues going into the lake, and that kind of leads us into, the discussion about climate change and its known impacts on Lake Tahoe. Do you feel, Ted, that the city has a responsibility for addressing policies to impact climate change and its effect on Lake Tahoe?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that the common sense kind of things, I mean, we should be looking at electric vehicles, we should be looking at our carbon footprint in terms of what the city's doing. Yeah, I mean, this is just, I think, the stuff that you and I would be doing, that the city is no different, because the city is people, I mean, the staff and what have you. So
would policymakers, would they have a role in impacting
that? Yeah, start with that, and so you can say, do as I do, not just what I say, and set examples for people. Now, also, we can look at projects. I mean, look at what we recently completed in the Sierra Tract with curbs and gutters and stuff. I mean, it took a tremendous amount of runoff and now is going into a protected system. So the city Harrison Avenue project, which goes back 11 years ago, I was active in that in the beginning, which is a big contribution towards that. So there's projects, civil projects which will help there. But I think a lot of it is changing attitudes. It's like we're having a big battle over whether climate change is real and this stuff. I mean, from my point of view, it's crazy. But I mean, is it worth, let's assume you believe that, and you might even have some evidence. Is it really worth taking the chance? I mean, what do you got to lose by cleaning up the environment and living better? I mean, it sounds like some people are using climate change as an excuse to continue to pollute, and it seems crazy to me. We all win when we make those kind of steps, and the city can be the leadership in that.
Excellent. Great. Well, moving right along, based on your experience, your years in service here for our city, and
remind me of how old
at
I'm
a state level too. Well, really, Ted, we were curious, considering your experience and years in service, why not mentor a younger candidate to run instead of running yourself?
Well, I'm open to that. In fact, I would prefer that. And I recently, working with Martine in the Latino community, a project, in fact, we're having a meeting coming up on October 6th, trying to find we got a third of our population is Latino, and you never see anybody. Yet they do a tremendous job. I'm telling you, go out to the soccer, 500 kids, instead of spraying graffiti, are playing soccer. I mean, it's a great program. Yet it's like pulling teeth to get somebody out of the community who would be willing to run for office. And some of it's cultural, some of it's, I don't know, the fear of the unregistered and that sort of thing. But there's somebody out there. So I would love to pilot that program to bring a Latino into the public forum. And I'm available. I've talked to the college. I mean, you teach a course in government, invite me out. Let me share some of my experience, and perhaps we can inspire someone to do that. But personally, I just love this stuff. I mean, controversy is healthy in my opinion. I mean, if we're not talking and disagreeing and agreeing and processing things, we go nowhere. I mean, and we are gifted as humans with a voice. And it's like, it's like voting. we're gifted with a voice, and so many people don't use it. So many people, don't vote and don't get involved, and we need, it's really important.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. We
You're
appreciate your time today.
You're
and to our
welcome.
viewers, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you watching. Make sure you stay tuned on our Facebook page, the Tahoe Regional Young Professionals, and find out more at TahoeTRYP.org, TahoeTRYP.org. Ted,
Great.
thanks again.